Hey everyone, I'm Konstantinos and this is Konstantin Knows Tech. It's time to review the iPhone 16 Pro. I'm just gonna come out and say it. The iPhone 16 Pro, it's the perfect iPhone. I'll admit that was a little bit of a clickbaity title because if you ask me what is the perfect iPhone on September 19th, 2024, I would say it's the iPhone 15 Pro. I'll say this though, just because this phone is arguably the best version of the phone, does that mean it's actually good? Because honestly, it's not my favorite iPhone. Also, this isn't a full review because Apple released it with a lot of software that was missing. Although it was advertised, we won't see that until iOS 18.1 and 18.2 later in 2024 and 2025. I'm not reviewing the promise of future products, I'm reviewing this device in my hand right now. All in, I think that the iPhone 16 Pro is the least Apple-like device that they could have released. Let's dive right in. Before we go into what's new, let's talk about what's familiar. We're still seeing that super awesome 120 Hz ProMotion display. It's a super bright display with a PPI of 409. There's still grade 5 titanium all around, and there's still the action button, which is brought over to the regular 16 model as well. And I'll admit, I'm not as cool as everyone else. I just stick with the stock mute and unmute button. It also is still IP68 water and dust resistant, which means it can survive a max depth of 6 meters up to 30 minutes underwater. And it still has the same 3-camera design, which honestly, I think it looks good. Now here what's new with the 16 Pro. Apple has increased the size from 6.1 to 6.3 inches, and the Pro Max got an increase in size as well from 6.7 to 6.9 inches. Although the ProMotion display hasn't changed in that it goes up to 2000 nits, which is plenty bright in daytime, the new feature is that it goes down to now one single nit, so it gets really dim and it's perfect for viewing in really dark environment. Ceramic Shield got an update to its 3rd generation, so the glass is shatter resistant than ever. That being said, I will always use a screen protector because if there's one pet peeve that I have, it's micro scratches. And as we know, all glass breaks. The device now comes with the A18 Pro with 8 gigabytes of RAM, so this will be plenty useful for when Apple Intelligence eventually comes out. There's a larger battery and it can go up to 27 hours of video playback, which is a pretty substantial upgrade from the 15 Pro. The 16 Pro also gets the periscopic lens for the telephoto camera from the Pro Max, unlike last year's version. So for the first time ever, the Pro and the Pro Max have the same exact hardware except for size and battery. And last but not least, we have the new camera control non-button button. There's a lot of other stuff that was released, but it's tied to the software, so we'll dive into that later. I'm certainly no camera and video expert, so I'll just come out and say it as somebody that uses their phone when they try to take photos of my dog, of random nice pretty scenery here and there. The cameras are excellent. Both the main lens and the ultra-wide have a 48 megapixel lens. The ultra-wide was upgraded from 12 megapixels last year. And the telephoto lens is 12 megapixels and it goes all the way up to 5 times optical zoom. Also important to point out, the front-facing lens is still a 12 megapixel camera. The bigger upgrades come in the form of video. You can shoot 4K 120 frames per second from this. That's crazy. For reference, the camera that I'm shooting on cannot shoot in that high of a frame rate. It's honestly a technological marvel that this thing can shoot in that format. Be warned though, if you have ProRes and log enabled and you do shoot in 4K 120, you can use up your entire phone's worth of storage in a matter of minutes. The lenses themselves are honestly fantastic, and it's just amazing what a smartphone can do nowadays. There's a new tool called Photographic Styles, and it's a little bit more advanced than just applying a filter. It highlights different parts of the image differently. It's more advanced than previous years, and you can yield some cool results. Last but not least, there's a super cool audio mix tool that uses software magic to change the direct direction of sound. The 4 styles are standard, studio, in-frame, and cinematic. I'm testing it out here with a sound of a cafe playing on the computer because I completely forgot to test this out when I was out. I'm testing it out here with a sound of a cafe playing on the computer because I completely forgot to test this out when I was out. I'm testing it out here with a sound of a cafe playing on the computer because I completely forgot to test this out when I was out. I'm testing it out here with a sound of a cafe playing on the computer because I completely forgot to test this out when I was out. Now that we covered what's carried over and what's new, let's talk about some of the pros and cons. First pro, the size. The size is absolutely perfect. The Plus and Pro Max version of the devices have always been too big for me. The jump from 6.1 to 6.3 inches adds just enough screen real estate where it feels like it's a worthwhile upgrade. The biggest thing is it's honestly easier to type on, and I absolutely love it. They managed to increase the size of the device by shrinking the bezels and also increasing the dimensions ever so slightly so it doesn't feel a lot bigger in your hand. The design and color. The natural titanium just looks so sleek and premium, and the titanium is a lot less fingerprinty than last year, at least on the natural titanium. I can't speak for the other colors. Now the screen. It has to be one of the nicest, best looking screens out there. Colors looks great. ProMotion and the high refresh rate is just fantastic. I've said it before and I'll say it again. If Apple released the regular model with 90 Hertz, I would jump on that in a second. And the fact that Apple still sells a flagship device in 2024 with 60 Hertz is just insane. Something that I wouldn't normally talk about, but wanted to, was the microphones. The microphones on this device are just so good. They're so good that this audio right here is from the iPhone 16 Pro microphones directly. Now let's dive into some of the cons. Unfortunately, due to the increased size, the weight has also increased. We're back to a similar weight from a couple years ago when we were using stainless steel. The iPhone 16 Pro comes in at 199 grams, and it is a bit heavier and a little more uncomfortable. That being said, I will take the trade-off for the increased size. It's just something that's noticeable, especially with a case. This was a Pro, but it's also a con, and that's the design. And that's only for the Pro versions because it just doesn't look as cool and fresh as the regular 16s with their fun new colors. I would love to see a product red 16 Pro or some other color that isn't just some form of beige or natural. The next con is a minor one, but I do want to highlight it, and that is cases. And I know that this is not just on Apple and on the case manufacturers themselves. Hopefully it can be fixed in time and the designs can be modified. I just don't like how so many companies are coming out with a cutout or a notch for the camera control on the new devices. The large cutouts, the tapered edges, it just doesn't feel natural and it feels unfinished. And honestly, kind of lazy. To me, it's a compromise visually and structurally, and I just am not a big fan. There's not a case review video, so I'm not going to go into too many details, but there are a few companies that do have a cover for the camera control, and they do a good job of creating a case that is both visually appealing and structurally sound to protect all areas of the device. Let's talk about the next big feature that's out on the device, and that's camera control, which is a capacitive touch button. Because let's be honest, it's just a button. You can do a half press to initiate it, and then you can change the lens type. And apparently in iOS 18.1, there will be more features like ability to autofocus with a half press. It tries to mimic a camera button, but honestly, it just feels like it's in the wrong place. It should be a little bit lower on the device. It should be a little bit lower on the device, like down here instead of all the way up here. It's kind of unnatural to have to go all the way over. And here's the thing when it comes to camera control. I don't think that it adds any value. I often forget about it and I accidentally touch it when I'm pulling it out of my pocket. And when I do use it, I feel like I have to press it down and it moves my camera out of focus. So I haven't had the best time with it, and I'm not the biggest fan. I talked about this a little bit in my reaction video, but what I think Apple is trying to do is to retrain us, the users, on shooting photos and videos horizontally instead of vertically. Because of social media, we all shoot vertically. But Apple is banking on us users to generate new content for spatial photos and video. That only works when it's shot horizontally. Whether this is for Apple Vision Pro or for something else in the future, I don't know, but I think that's what the camera control is actually there for. What would be really cool is if we could use the camera control some type of capacitive touch pad. So if you're holding your phone vertically, you would be able to scroll up and down on whatever app you were using. Or how cool would it be if that could be a new Touch ID? I don't think that will ever happen, but it would be cool. You can't not mention software when reviewing a phone, even if it's unfinished. So I have to make an honorable mention to iOS 18. What has made Apple so great historically is that it's been a perfect marriage between hardware and software. Although slow to get new features that Android had for ages, When Apple did it, it did it well. I can't say that that's been the case for iOS 18. I know it's still early days, and I'm not even referencing the features that haven't been released yet, but it just feels clunky, for lack of a better word. From battery drain to random glitches to the new Photos app not being very smooth, it hasn't been the smoothest experience. Also, I know that customization is great. It's what makes Android so fun to use. That being said, the control center is almost anxiety-inducing with how much you can do, but we managed to figure it out. I'm sure most people will take it out of the box and just never touch it, but if you found your way to watching this video, I know that you probably aren't afraid to customize a few things on your devices. One thing I do love about iOS 18 is the dark mode apps. I have mine set to automatic, so in light mode it's all light mode, in dark mode it's dark, but the seamless transition between that I think was beautifully done. I'm not as big a fan as the tinted apps, but dark mode apps look great. I know there's a lot more to be released with iOS 18. We'll unpack that when it's released. The 16 Pro kind of feels like a step backwards for Apple. They have a tendency to remove things, whether its users like it or not, whether that's the headphone jack, 3D touch, or even Touch ID. All of these things were removed in the name of simplifying design and making room for better things. The 16 Pro and the experience with iOS 18, at least for now, feels busy and complex for no apparent reason at all. I would have much rather seen Apple do away with all the physical buttons and just have capacitive touch. That seems more innovative than just adding a button called camera control. When companies like Samsung introduced dedicated buttons that were feature locked to activate their assistant like Bixby, everyone was up in arms until they removed it or customized it or opened it up so you could map it to different apps. So honestly, it feels a little hypocritical to just accept it because Apple did it. Like I said at the start of the video, this is the best, latest iPhone, and it's just fine. The design is still beautiful, the screen is fantastic, and the camera is great. But should you upgrade? Probably not. I honestly wouldn't have if I didn't get a great promotion from T-Mobile. Not sponsored, by the way. If you love to have the latest and greatest tech, and yes, I know I'm guilty of that as well, then sure, go ahead and upgrade. Or if you have the 12 or older, sure, yeah, maybe it will be a good upgrade. But in any other circumstance, it's not really that novel of an experience. It'll be more of the same. You'll get a slightly bigger device with better battery and better speakers. The iPhone 16 Pro, it's a good phone, and that's fine. If you've learned anything in this video, please give it a like, and if you'd like to see more of this content, make sure to subscribe. This is Konstantinos with Konstantin Knows Tech, and remember, life's short, buy tech.